Hi, I'm Jessica Jackson of the Thriving in Motherhood podcast, and today I am talking with Brooke Romney. Now, she is an author and runs an amazing online community on Instagram and mother of four boys that are teenage to adults. And we have an amazing conversation about teaching your kids manners. So if you struggle with manners in your home or just wanting to be proactive and having, kids that are able to be successful in day-to-day life, this will have some really practical ideas and applications that you can start with today. And we also dive really deep into this idea of joy and how you go from just logging through, and feeling those feelings of perfectionism and getting stuck in things not going well and wanting to control and orchestrate everything versus participating and how to go to feel that joy and how to be present and how to be involved with your kids. It's this type of conversation that I was just yearning for when I started the podcast 5 years ago. And so to be able to have what I've got so many episodes in the past, like Jennifer Pepito stands out in my mind from a couple of years ago. Like I think she's been here on twice, but these moms that are just a little bit further along, she's 10 years ahead of me, that just have so much wisdom and are so generous to share just these comforting and soul filling and nurturing thoughts. So, it is a wonderful packed episode today, and I'm excited to dive in with you. If you haven't yet, please head over to thrivingandmotherhoodpodcast.com/podcast, and you can ask a question to have on the show. So anything that comes to mind with motherhood that you want some thoughts on and research or practical tools about, I would love to answer that for you on the podcast so that these episodes are practical and what you are looking for and will truly help you in the season of life that you're in. If you have the question, somebody else probably does. So you're doing a good turn by asking. Hi, I'm Jessica Jackson, and this is the new way to thrive in motherhood by leaning into who you are, what you love, your unique family situation, and personal mission to create a life that you actually want to live. I want to invite you to join me in saying no to the life of the exhausted supermom, burnout, victim thinking, being pulled in so many directions, suffering through survival mode, or being lost in motherhood, and say yes to building strong families and moving forward on our greatest goals in order to create a fulfilling life that we are excited to wake up to each day and become a soaring mother. This is the Thriving in Motherhood podcast. I want to just take a moment and let you know about something free that I've created just for you. It's the 5-step path from surviving to thriving checklist. It is a beautiful document that will help you figure out exactly where you are on that path from surviving to thriving and know what to focus on in each phase of that path so that you can feel that joy and confidence no matter what season of motherhood you are in. You can get it today at thrivingandmotherhoodpodcast.com/checklist. Welcome, everyone, to the Thriving and Motherhood podcast. Today, I'm here with Brooke Romney. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for our discussion.
Well, I'm really excited because you are talking about something that we have maybe never covered here on the podcast, which is manners and how they can help our children. So before we jump into that wonderful topic, would you just let us know a little bit more about yourself and where you're coming from?
I would love to. So, I am a mom of four boys from ages 21 down to 11. And we have a really fun, energetic household, and sometimes one that doesn't always feel well mannered. I have been a writer since college and worked for newspapers and magazines, started a blog. When those became a little more popular, I wasn't great at it. So I'm really grateful for Instagram. I've created a really incredible community of people who come together to support each other in their parenting journey. And it's just been it's been a joy to learn and facilitate and be part of that community myself.
Wonderful. And let's also share just right off the bat, you've written 4 books now. Why don't
Yes.
you tell us a little bit about those? Because I think it adds a good context for our conversation today.
Sure. So the first one was a spiritual self-help book called I Like Me Anyway. And then the next two are Modern Manners for Teens, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And then the one that I just released in October, which maybe your audience would be really excited about, is 52 Modern Manners for Kids. And it has just been an incredible gift for me to be able to see these books in people's homes, the way they're improving the lives of their kids and helping them understand how to be successful in like social, emotional relationships and also in physical relationships. And then really empowering parents to know what to teach and how to teach it in a way that doesn't feel too personal. I love being that third party in the home. So it's not always just from mom and dad, but from a book and something that all kids and all teens need to learn about.
I love it so much. And I mentioned to you before, but when we go visit our family in Utah, I'm amazed at how many bathrooms and kitchen counters I see your manners books in for teens. And I'm excited to have the children's version in our home because, it's just nice to start. I'm all about starting as early as possible. Like I'm even reading 7 Habits for Teenagers with my 8 and 10-year-old, like I feel like the earlier you start when they still like you and like want to be like you as a parent is a great time to start these conversations.
I love that you said that because after I wrote the Modern Manners for Teens, people were like, we want to start this journey earlier, especially like you said, when our kids are still interested in sitting at the dinner table with us, when they're not rushing off to practices and work and things like that, when we have dedicated family time, when they might feel like it's really cool to learn how to act better or to improve their relationships. And so this book has been really successful because families are willing to put it into practice. So that's been really fun.
Well, and I think it takes such a proactive approach too. Like we just want to equip our kids to be confident and successful, right? And I think as parents, sometimes I don't know what to do. And so let's maybe dive into this is kind of we're just jumping in because I am excited. I've got questions
Let's
for
do
you.
it.
So why don't we start with why these manners are even important? Like I can imagine it myself, but I would love to hear your take on it.
Well, it's interesting because I get that question a lot. Like, are manners obsolete today? And I think that's a really good place for us to come and start from because, in a way, some of them are. Some of the things that Emily Post says might not be what your family wants to spend their time and energy working on. But I was really cognizant of the manners that matter. And to me, I'm all about connection. So the manners that matter in here are the ones that help our kids increase their social connection, increase their awareness, and increase their kindness. Because I think when you are connected, when you're aware and you're kind, those people live successful lives. Those successful lives are going to look very different, but they can feel successful on the inside when they are connected, aware, and kind.
So can you give us an example of some of these manners that are in your book for kids then?
Yeah, I would love to. So I have so many favorites. And then I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the book because that was really important to me too. But the first manner, and I think this is a pain point for most parents, is wait for your turn to talk. So that is basically saying we don't interrupt. And I worked really hard. Not every manner is perfectly positive, but I worked really hard to have positive language. So it's wait for your turn to talk, something that they can be in control of. And that is important because it shows respect. It shows that other people matter to you. And so in the book, what I do is I thought it was really important for parents and kids to have common language. So anytime you're somewhere and your kid interrupts you, you can say, remember, we wait for our turn to talk. And that's something that you know and that they know because it's something your family's gone over. Like you said, this book is really proactive. It hits the pain points before we get to them so that when we're talking to our kids about these things, it's not a negative experience. It's actually a positive and a connective experience. So you have the common language. So that's how the manner starts. So it's wait for your turn to talk. And then it gives a little bit of an explanation of what that means. And then it was so important to me. So at the bottom, it has a why, because every kid is going to say why. And from kids to teens, they want to know what's in it for me. Just saying, like, because I want to look like a good parent or because I want to have nice kids is not all that motivational. But when you read, because waiting for your turn to talk shows respect for other people, you can dig a little deeper. Oh, what happens when we show respect to other people? Oh, they like us, they want us around, they trust us, so there's the why. And then on the back, this was really important to me in the kids version, is we have a let's practice section. And when my kids were young, role playing and talking about scenarios was so powerful. And so I knew I wanted to include that here. So you're going to explain the manner, talk through it, give them a why, and then you're going to see if they get it. And I also like these scenarios because there's some nuance in waiting for your turn to talk. So one of the questions says, you're at the park, your mom's talking to a friend, and you can't remember what your dog's name is. That's not a good time to interrupt. But there's another one where your mom and her and the neighbor are talking outside and your sister falls down and hurts herself on her bike. Well, that's a really good time to interrupt. And then we have a little family challenge so that the whole family is working together this for the week. There's 52 manners. So they're going to be working really hard on waiting for their turn to talk. And the family challenge says, next time you feel like interrupting your parents while they are busy, try to use your silent family signal instead. So we talk about finding a family signal that might work that's instead of interrupting. So maybe it's like 2 squeezes on a hand, so that your mom knows, like, I do have something to say and she can find a good time. I really wanted these books to be useful. I wanted them to be practical. I wanted them to be short and sweet. I remember as a younger parent, and even as a parent of teenagers, you get all these ideas that are really excellent. And then the implementation of them is not excellent. And so I wanted it to be so easy for families that it was just like a no-brainer. Do you have 5 minutes? I will give you everything you need to know, how to say it, the why behind it, and how to practice it. And I think it's working really well for the families that are doing it.
Well, and as I hear it, there's so many principles like layered into that as well. Like it's a way to have fun together, right? And be silly with those role plays, which I love. It's a way like so many moms are just stressed out because of the noise volume. I have talked to so many moms this week in those young states, like it is so loud in our homes, right? And so like this, something that is so beneficial for the kids can also be beneficial like right now, right? And helping to decrease some of the
Absolutely.
stress levels in the home. And then it also creates this family culture where you're talking about words like respect, right? And you're like creating a family culture that will be long lasting, right?
Yes.
And so it's
Yes.
like there's so many. I'm selling your book for you. There's so many layers here that I just really value. And so I love that you just create a simple way to like hit so many ideals in our
Yeah.
families.
Yeah. That was really important to me. I think too, parents today, like you talked about, where it's so noisy, volume wise, yes, but just there's so much information and there's so
Yes.
many things that parents feel like they should do, they have to do, they need to do, that it can sometimes all get lost, and kind of be paralyzing where you're like, I don't even know where to spend my time. And I really wanted this to be something where parents could say, I can do this. I can do this. And after 1 year, my kid will know 52 things that are really important for being a good human. And you can feel very successful as a parent because of those conversations. You can move to the teen book after that. And now they know 52 more things. I have parents whose kids have to go through those books before they get phones, before they can drive. They use them as a teenager, I want you to teach these manners to your younger siblings. That is your job for the week. There's so many creative ways to really get our kids to buy into this. And then the long-term effects are incredible for them as an individual because they become the kids who are aware, kind, and connected.
I love that. Be aware, kind of connected. So, okay. So that's why they matter and the impact they can have. That's good. So here's my question. Because you had 4 children fairly close together. This is what's been happening in my home. I go to we have all of our friends have lots of kids, big families. And there's this wonderful thing among siblings where it's like if one person starts not using manners, and I live in the South, so manners are not dead. They are very important.
Yeah.
So if someone's not using manners, like it's so silly and it just runs downhill so fast. So what do you do in these situations where you want to teach these manners and like the kids thinks it's so funny to do the exact opposite of everything you're trying to instill?
You know, I I think there's a place in families for silliness. And I think that if we can teach our kids and if we can be a part of that silliness, they may not need it so much in public. So even something small saying like, you know what? That is so funny. Let's talk about that at home. Giving them the permission to be silly. So in fact, my 12-year-old, when we work on these manners, he almost always tells me the opposite of every situation that we're saying. So in this situation, what would you do? And he says, oh, I would yell so loud and I would make sure you stop talking, but he knows. And so I lean into that. Like for a kid to be the exact opposite, they know. And then I really think a lot of positive reinforcement when we see them. So I love to tell families like when you're working on the manner of waiting for your turn to talk, as a parent being hyper aware of when your kids do that. So we're not going to focus so much. It's easy to say, remember, we wait for our turn to talk, but we don't always only want to do that. We want to say, you guys were amazing when we were at the park today. Not one person interrupted me while I was talking to my friend, or everyone used that hand signal. And that made the park so fun for me. Thanks for having everyone be on board. So I think the more we can do positive reinforcement and show our kids that there's a time for fun and silliness and letting go, I think that can be really beneficial for our family culture and for us as parents to be able to enjoy parenthood. It doesn't always have to be so serious. And I think when we do let go, and then we can turn to them and say, hey, right now is not a time for you to be interrupting. They know it's time to be serious about that manner.
Oh, I love that so much. And letting there be times and places, but not robots all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing too is you mentioned time and place and letting the kids do the opposite and identify. We've had this interesting experience since we've been reading the 7 Habits book of when we watch a movie, we can clearly see someone either is not following one of these principles, right? Or is following the principles. And then you see the cause and effect. And so it's also been like a really amazing way to engage in good conversations with the 10 and under crowd to just have principles top of mind, right? Because how many times in a movie would there be this interrupting, right? All the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love that you said that, because media can be difficult, but it can also be an incredible teacher where we notice the good and notice the bad. And that helps us be really conscious of the media that we're watching and the messages we're taking in. So I love that idea of using it in that way too.
Yeah. Well, I just think the reinforcement, right? The more things you can do,
Hmm.
especially when it's one a week, it's like, okay, great, everything. You see the connections. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what are some practical tips of what this looks like as a parent, as well as mindset shifts? Like you've already mentioned, like you have to let them be silly sometimes, right? Like that's important.
Yes.
What are some other things that you've noticed in the implementation of teaching kids or teenagers manners for parents to be
Yeah.
successful?
So one of the things that I thought was really important about this book, and for those who are just listening, so it actually is on its own stand, and then it's displayed. So you keep the manner displayed all week. And one of the reasons I did that is I have certain kids who would prefer not to learn so directly from their parents. So it was very important to me, especially with the teen ones, but I think this can be the case with kids too, is they need some autonomy when it comes to learning and taking messages in. And so if you have a kid who is not wanting to be part of the conversation, what I've found is that they still want to figure out how to be successful. So just having these books out, like you said, they're in bathrooms, they're in kitchens. People are taking the messages in almost whether they want to or not. And as they do that, for those who are very independent, as they do it on their own and they see the positive impacts of being that type of a person, they're going to trust that what is in here is something that will improve their lives, and they're going to want to know the next manner. I can't tell you how many experiences I have from parents who say, I never have to flip the manner. Somehow the manner's always changed. Someone just bought the book and she's making her kids go week by week. And she said they can hardly stand it. They just want to know what's next. Because as they're putting them into practice, they're really seeing good things. So when someone no longer interrupts and every time, excuse me, or waits to adults notice, then what I like to call it is there is a great positive feedback loop. So all of a sudden, this kid who is now really, really capable of the 52 modern manners that you've been teaching is the kid that gets invited to a lot of places. He's the kid that the teacher trusts to get things done, the special helper. He's the kid who, decides that he's going to be the one that pitches in. And so he gets a lot of positive reinforcement for putting the chairs away after, cleaning up. There's a manner in the teen book that says, be kind to younger siblings. So he's the kid that the parents like, oh, we love having your son over. He's always so nice to our little kids. This is incredible because our kids are understanding their character. People aren't praising them because they're so smart or because they're the best athlete. They're praising them because of who they are on the inside. And that is a really incredible way for our kids to increase their own confidence. So I've seen great things happen like that, where parents are diligent, where they're teaching it or they're letting their kids take it in on their own, whichever works best for their family. And then the kids are seeing the big changes in their life and they're feeling really capable too. And that's the other thing that I think is really important is kids get in tricky situations. There's times when they truly don't know what to do. Okay, like, am I supposed to do that? Am I not supposed to do that? Or there's some about online things that might be tricky. And it's like, oh, okay. So when I see something that doesn't feel good to my spirit or my soul, this is what I'm supposed to do. I have a lot more confidence now. You have those conversations early, you bring them up, and then life isn't so scary. And I think a lot of kids and a lot of teens are scared. And when they feel equipped, they don't have to be so scared and they can live a fuller life.
That is so powerful because I think it's that lack of feeling like control, like you're saying, like I don't know what to do, that creates a lot of that anxiety and failure to launch situations that we are hearing about now. And
Yeah,
and so I think this is just a lovely way to empower and kind of get ahead of some of that.
I absolutely agree. I mean, things like in the kids' book, there's one that talks about being a good friend at recess. And I love like it goes through scenarios. It says what it looks like. And how much better is that than a kid being called in from recess, because he just didn't know, or, he just wasn't sure, or everyone else was doing it. And so it's so nice, to get in front of that. There's another manner that talks about being polite with food. So it talks about what do you do when grandma puts all of the food on your plate and you don't like some of it, or when you're at a friend's house and they offer you a snack that you don't care for. It's so empowering for these little kids to be able to say, no, thank you, I'm fine. Or I'll try one bite and it's okay for me to push the rest over to the side. Whatever your family decides as you're going through those scenarios is a polite way to be polite with food. But it's so empowering for these kids to start out really young, feeling really equipped to handle some of these tricky situations.
Well, and I think another thing you mentioned is autonomy. Like the sooner we can get kids to be able to see where they have influence in their own life, the better, right? That's a muscle that they need. They need to know how to make choices. They need to know how to take ownership.
Yeah, that was especially, I love that for the kids book and especially important for the teen book. There's so many teenagers that often get into a little funk of, I can't control this. There's nothing I can do about it. This is just who I am. This is what my life is. And so many of the manners in there teach something exactly opposite, like control what you can control, advocate for yourself at school. There's just so many in there that talk about you create the life that you want to have. And then you let go of the rest when things don't go your way, when someone's mean. One of the manners in the kids book or in the teen book is find new friends. If your friends are constantly being unkind and putting you down, and this is a consistent problem, it's time to find new friends. I can't tell you how many messages I've received about that manner alone, where parents open that manner up, they talk about it, and their kid comes to them later and says, I got to find new friends. But it had never crossed their mind that it was a possibility. They thought they just had to stay in really unhappy relationships because they weren't sure there was something else out there for them. So just to hear it and to know they're not alone and they're not the only teenager that goes through times where their friends are unkind, was really empowering for them to say, okay, and part of that manner says there's going to be times you're going to be alone. These new friends might not feel as cool as the old friends, but it's better to be liked for who you are, and I love the confidence that that gives kids to say, I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready to improve my own life.
Well, and I think what's so powerful, it's like these are a lot of ideas I got as an adult, like it just like I didn't come naturally. And so I love that you're just basically planting all of these seeds and they will sprout at the right time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like sometimes parents get a little discouraged because, you're going over the manners and your kids are still not doing them or you're not seeing it in your home. And what I've found is kids aren't always the best mannered for their family. But they do like to show off those manners in public because they get usually a really good reaction. And like you said, sometimes it's maybe not quite the right time. But when it is, and when they're mature enough and when they understand the importance of it, that will come back to them, that being aware is important. Or, not saying that's for babies. So there's a manner in the kids' book that says nothing is just for babies. And maybe that's something that they don't quite get yet.
I think
But
kids
as
are
they
pretty
mature,
smart. They should be able to
yeah,
figure that out pretty quick.
right.
Even my
But as they're
5-year-old, that
aware,
would hit home.
right. And they might not be quite ready to practice that because sometimes it feels good to be superior. But as they start to kind of internalize things and see that there's another option, they may choose to start practicing that more often.
Well, and I was just, reflecting like we don't what I think is really interesting about this is it almost offloads that behavioral I think that need as parents that we have to like micromanage behaviors so that we can focus on the relationship because we know it's happening in time. Like because it's just there in the environment. And so I don't feel like as a parent, I have to go and micromanage and fix everything right now. And it just kind of
Yeah.
gives like some time. So it's like we can really focus on our connection. Like the whole point is to have connected kids, but like as a parent, I can focus on being connected to them now. I don't have to
Yeah.
correct everything right now.
Yeah. And that was, so one of my kids I found was especially sensitive to correction.
Yeah.
It made him feel like we didn't approve of him or we didn't like him or he was doing things wrong. And being able to take feedback, that's actually a manner in one of my teenager books because it's very important, something we need to work on. But I think there's kids that are especially sensitive to that. And one of,
Well, and from the people that know them best. It's like one thing to get it from
yes,
outside, but from the people that know
yes,
you inside and out, that's hard.
yeah, it feels hard. And
Yeah.
so one of the other motivations for this book for me was that we could talk about important things because you just can't never correct your kids, right? Like that's not helpful to them either.
Right.
But we could talk about these things and get ahead of the curve so that I wasn't just piling on him like, oh my gosh, why didn't you help clean up when we left the house? That was ridiculous. Like, they're not going to want to invite you back. Instead, it's like, oh, remember, like, we leave kindly or whatever the manner is, make sure you go help clean up. That's, one of our manners. Or things like, if I watch him within an interaction, like on, hey, how come you didn't invite that friend? I'm not always micromanaging that. We've talked about how we don't leave one person out. That's a manner in one of the teen books. Don't leave just one person out. He knows that. We can trust that. I can maybe flip to show that manner subtly through the next week, or maybe we talk about it again. Um, and also take some weight off me where he is making a choice that maybe is against some of the things that we've taught, but he knows what we believe. He knows what's important to us. He knows what we value. And maybe he's figuring it out for himself right now. And being able to, like you said, have a little patience. We're teaching, it's happening, he's learning, it's not perfect yet. And there's time to still learn.
Yeah. Well, and I think we have to expect that. Like just because they read it
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're going to be perfect. It means that they're going to mess up, but they're going to know maybe why something went wrong.
Yes. And that they know what your value is when it
Right.
comes to that. And that was really important to me because they're not going to do everything like you hoped, but you do hope that when they leave your home, they do know what was important to you. When it all comes down to it, they're like, I wasn't great at being inclusive, but I know that's important to my parents. Like I could have been more inclusive because they talked about that and they shared it and they, tried to facilitate that. And I could probably work on that as an adult now that I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, what is your number one tip for improving manners at home?
I think my number one tip is just doing it. I think for so many of us, we have ideas and desires, and then it's really in the practice that we get lost. And so just doing the manner once a week, it's not hard. It's really, really simple. And there's families that do it in all kinds of fun and creative ways, and it's very involved. And there's families, like I said, who just put the manner up and let their kids read it. But either way, I think it's very useful and helping our kids gain a little more confidence, have a few more successful moments. Um, and then when it comes to really emphasizing it, just praising the heck out of your kids when you see them doing the manner in a great way.
Well, and to that point too, it's like who cares what the kids are doing? It gives you something to be watching for and to focus
Yeah.
on yourself. Like this week, I'm going to be really good at noticing every time my kids do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to
Yes.
keeping track of how well they are or are not doing it.
Well, and just when you said that, I obviously wrote these books, and every
Right.
time I flip to a new manner, I'm reminded of things that I can work on. I'm reminded that I'm not quite as good at walking people to the door when they leave my home as I could be. Or I'm reminded that I don't always, like, sometimes I accidentally share something that's hurtful. I was like, oh, that wasn't the best thing to let them know that. Or I could have done that in a kinder way. Um, and so every time we flip the page, I'm reminded of my own manners that can improve. And I think as parents, sharing that with your kids, you guys, this manner is actually so hard for me. I'm so bad at interrupting. It is so hard for me to wait for my turn to talk. I'm just a talker and I just love it and I'm working on it. So if I don't wait for my turn to talk this week, you guys call me out.
Yeah. Keep it fun, not just about the kids,
Hmm.
like whole family improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful too. So, And something else that just came to mind, like, I think one of the things that's amazing about your book is when any mom, when any person, this has been written in all of the books, any book you read about habits or anything, right? It's like, how can you set up your environment, do the environmental design? How can you set it up to make the thing you want to do easy to do? And so by having a stand on the counter and putting it in a spot where, or, wherever it is, wherever your family
Yeah.
gathers, wherever the kids are watching, like that makes the thing easy to do. And
Yeah.
so I think like whether you're buying the book or whether you just sit down after this episode and brainstorm a list of 10 things you want your kids to learn and focus on those every week, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
but like just putting it in a spot where it's easy to do it because environmentally you can't not.
That was really important to me. And there was someone that sent me a message and I loved it. She said that they do their they do a family movie night every Friday. And now it's manners and movies. And so
That's
they
so
like,
great.
isn't that so fun? So they
Yes.
pair the two together. So it's not like, oh, we're having this manner discussion. It's like, it's Friday night, manners and movies, because it takes 5 minutes, right? So they do the manner. And then I love what you said. Like, let's call it out in the movie.
I
Let's
know. I'm
see where
thinking
it's
like this is
happening.
even
Like,
better than she realized.
yes,
Yeah.
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 I'm like, that's such a fun idea. And reminding yourself that it doesn't always have to be so serious. It doesn't have to just be on Sunday. Do it and make it fun. And make it easy. Like if you watch a movie every Friday, or for some people they do a family night every Monday. This is a super easy way to do a family night. Some people do scripture study together on Sunday. Add this to the beginning of scripture study. Stack
Like
those
make it that
habits,
trigger.
make it
Yeah. Habit
doable.
stacking. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so I love to ask all moms that are on my show, what is something that you have mastered?
Oh, wow. I That's a really good question. I don't know that I've mastered anything actually. Um, let's think. Yeah, I guess I have mastered in mostly enjoying motherhood, I would say. It's
That's
something
awesome.
that it wasn't easy with young kids at all. And that was like definitely something that was really, really, really trying. I had a lot of energy and a lot of high needs for my kids. Um, but a lot of the shifts that I've made in my mindset have allowed me to find a lot of joy in motherhood. That doesn't mean that there's not frustration and there aren't times when I'm mad about something, but for the most part, I find a lot of joy in being a mom.
Okay, so give us one of those mindset shifts that made a difference for you.
So, one of the mindset shifts is that I don't have control over the outcomes of what my kids decide to be or who they are or what they choose, that I can only control the effort that I put into being their mom. And so I've really stopped gaining my own validation from my children's experiences and really worked on finding that peace inside myself. And through God and through my own connections to them and to other people, I think it took me a long time to let go of the idea that things needed to be perfect for me to enjoy them. And so now that I've kind of let that go, I feel a lot of joy even when things are really messy. And I also choose joy. I choose to be present. I don't want to be the orchestrator of our life. I want to be a part of our life. And so I climb the rocks and I play the pickleball, and sometimes food is fast so that I can enjoy it too. And I just really work on being present.
I love that concept so much of not being the orchestrator of life, but being engaged in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It really changed things for me when I stopped feeling all the responsibility to do all the things and to create this magical life. I was like, I want to be a part of this magical life, which means certain things don't always get done. And sometimes it doesn't look as good as you want it to. And then my kids are older and giving them the autonomy to be able to choose to engage with our family. Like sometimes it's not a choice, but what I've realized is I don't want to be needed. I want to be wanted. So I don't want my kids to need me forever. And that's why I'm in their life. I want them to want me to be a part of it. And that means doing things a little differently. like not making myself like somebody that they have to call or they have to help or whatever. And I know as I get older, there will be times when they are going to have to, help and do things they might not want me to do. Um, but to be someone that is enjoyable enough that they choose to be around.
I feel like we're just starting this interview.
I
There is
know.
so much more here to unpack. Okay. I'm going to try and restrain myself, but you just like opened a whole new conversation. That's amazing. Okay. What's something that you're still working on?
Oh, well, I'm working on a lot of things. Right now, probably the top of my list is using my time best. So I'm good at doing things and using my time, but I could be so much better. I have a hard time disciplining. I am not a disciplined person. We'll just go ahead and say that. Discipline is something that has been at the top of my mind, and I would like to become more disciplined. I'm definitely a freer spirit, definitely more of a creative. And I also have seen how important discipline can be when I pair that with some of my creativity. So I'm working on managing my time, following through without losing the best parts of myself, which are often the ones that are more spontaneous and willing to connect, and the ones that's like, oh, yeah, let's take a 2 hour walk. Oh, shoot, now I have a podcast. I want to keep the best parts of me, but I want to add some discipline into my life too.
Oh, that is so good. And what I love about this question and about your answer too is that there are so many incredible things you're clearly amazing at. And yet there's one little thing to to work on next, to just like make it that
Yes.
much better. And I feel like that came through on your answer.
Oh,
In
thank
like the
you.
most lovely way.
Thank you. Yeah, looking back at myself 20 years ago, like perfection, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to have it all together. I wanted to, eat right, exercise right, have the perfect relationships, the White House, all the things. Like I wanted all those things. And as I've just like really leaned in to what's most important and the things that I love and the things that bring me joy, it's been great. And also given me a lot of grace that there's plenty to work on and plenty of time to work on it.
Yes. Okay. Do you have any final parting thoughts and wisdom that you would like to share with those moms that are in those early years that are high energy and just a lot going on?
Yeah, I love I love where you are, and it is so hard. Like it was so hard. And when people say, "Oh, just wait until you have teenagers," I don't believe that for a second. There's nothing more physically demanding than having young children and feeling so new at something. And so what I want to remind people is you're new at this. Like you don't have to have it mastered. There is so much time to figure it out. And the most exciting thing about motherhood is you're always going to be new at it. You've never had a 12-year-old. You've never had a teenager. You've never had three kids who are teenagers at the same time. And while that can be really intimidating, it also leaves so much room for progress and growth. And that's really exciting when we look at it in a way where we're not needing to be perfect, but we're just needing to learn and we're needing to connect and we're needing to find joy. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off each stage of life.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Well, and I mean, that's the thriving, right? We're growing, we're plants, it's,
Yes,
it's about to grow.
exactly.
And I think the other thing I've realized too, in this vein of that stretch, because I am in that phase, right? I'm the one
Yeah.
battling those things right now and trying to stretch and grow out of some of those thoughts. And I realized like, and it's easy to stress about the future, right? Like, oh my goodness. And I think I'm realizing like, I just need to focus on my relationship with them today. I just need to have joy with
Yes.
them today. Like, and then I can
Yes.
worry about tomorrow. But like, if I just, I can compromise today's relationship if I'm stressing what it's going to be like 5 years down the road.
I love that you said that because one of the things I think I did that was so ridiculous was taking a behavior that they were doing at 5 and like morphing that to them being 25 and not being able to emotionally regulate, things that felt like so big. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this this child is actually going to be a pathological liar. Like he doesn't tell me the truth at 8. So I guess I'm raising a kid who will never tell the truth. And kind of projecting into the future. And I love your idea of staying present, working on the now with an eye to what you're hoping things will turn out as. And like you said, putting in those systems, putting in the work, putting in the effort, being willing to grow. but not being so rigid on who they are now, because they're going to be awesome. And they might be different than you thought. They might be awesome in a different way than you were even hoping, but they're going to be great because they have a mom who's engaged and interested and cares, and they will be able to thrive because of that.
Well, thank you so much, Brooke. I want to end on those notes. I felt like you were speaking just to me. And so I hope all those moms get that one-on-one connection that you just shared of that it really is okay and it's going to
Yeah.
be okay. So thank you so much. Well,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, this is delightful. I feel like I have to have a part two and talk about all your motherhood wisdom because we got 20 years to cover.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So let's just part with where's your amazing community online and where can people find your books? I'll link them in the show notes, but
Yeah. So I'm Brooke Romney Writes on Instagram. I'm really active there. The community is really active. It's helpful. It's uplifting. It's just a really great community to be a part of, regardless of what your kids' ages are. And then my books are all on Amazon. And then if you are lucky enough to live in Utah, Idaho, or Arizona, the kids' book is actually in Costco too.
that's like a huge deal. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really fun, and it's great for people to be able to walk into a store and buy a few and gift them and things like that. So it's really fun.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending all this time with me today.
Thank you.
Today, I'm excited to share with you about the Made to Soar Next 90 Days program. It is a self-paced online course with lots of interaction from me that has transformed the lives of women from all around the world as they have learned to build unique family systems that support them in their own unique life circumstances, that allow the necessary and essential things of life to get done and leave time and energy to do what matters most to them. I'm going to let some women who have been through the program tell you a little bit more about their experience now.
Just mucking through the day was just survival. And then I was like, the thought of trying to do anything extra was like, well, that's just never gonna happen.
I think with Made to Soar, I don't know, I was probably hoping that it'd be the magic bullet for morning.
I mean, we had no systems in our house. I mean, we had no routines. Like we were.
How can I infuse meaning into my life? And even if I do the same thing, how can I think about it differently so that I'm feeling fulfilled?
And so that was my goal in joining the Next 90 Days, was to figure out how to kind of handle all of these different domains. How do I become intentional with all of these things and make sure that I'm meeting my own expectations?
Now I have systems set in place that, like, you know, things like the laundry, just automatic, things get done.
Because I was able to have the foundation of some of these systems and routines, when things got crazy, I could still go back to those and be like, okay, well, at least the laundry got done. At least my kids got fed. At least I read the Bible and did my workout today.
So it helped me go through a couple big moves and big changes and to keep some level of stability for the family.
Figuring out how do I homeschool? How do I do it with consistency and some level of discipline? And then how do I build a business and still find meaningful work outside of my home? All of that, I wouldn't have known how to organize it. It was all kind of just like spaghetti in my brain.
With Made to Soar, just gaining clarity about what I wanted my days and weeks to look like, my hours and my spare minutes.
This is how we get to where we want to go, and just changing those expectations has helped me be happier.
You know, I have power to change my circumstances, right? That I can put in new routines. I can solve some of these problems. I can think about things differently and realize that I have power to be in a better place.
Where you are planted, watch the blossoms grow.